Welcome to Elevation 740. Today I have Mayor Dan Johnson, who is the mayor for the city of Lewiston. Welcome.
Thank you, Lynn. It's great to be here.
So my first question is the one that at least I've been dying to ask, because we now have this strong mayor form of government, and I'm curious, what are some of the changes that you've implemented since becoming mayor?
Well, Lynn, that's a great question. In fact, there's been a lot of them, and the reason why I think it's a great question is some of them are subtle. They're not so obvious to the public. So this is a great opportunity to talk about some of those. So I have a list here of some things I want to share with you, and I'll just briefly touch on those. So, for example, the Lewiston Fire Department, we had to go out for a new ladder truck, and we made some changes to that at the department. It's going to save the city several $100,000 in the new equipment coming in.
Ooh, I like the saving money aspect of that. Very nice.
Savings. Our community development, they've really knocked it out of the park. They've been changing a lot of our zoning requirements. For example, with parking, what used to be the maximum is now the minimum. It's about half what we used to require. So that's going to add flexibility for developers and possibly even help with other needs, such as housing in the community, where we can have less land dedicated to parking, these kind of things.
So just as a follow-up question then, so these are these the type of changes that are possible under the strong mayor form of government, that you're able to kind of assert more authority and control over that?
Well, I wish I could take credit for that, but I think really it's about pulling the team together and having a unified direction. And so this is part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to operate at the speed of business and move forward, make Lewiston a top-performing city.
Great. All right. Well, some other examples I'd love to hear.
Permit review times have been shortened. We've eliminated some fees, eliminated some business license requirements, like for our child care centers. The library, for example, they've been building a self-check machine for patrons to use rather than the library purchasing an expensive third-party machine that also involves annual software purchases. So again, this is forward thinking. How can we do business smarter and make it more available to the public? Utility billing, this is one of my favorite. We've added payment alternatives to provide convenience to our customers, so to our vendors. So if they will sign up for different ways to be paid, it shortens the process. It makes it quicker. It's less expensive for the city. Payment collections is more efficient when we do that. Purchasing, we've enhanced vendor services there too. Same thing with our vendors and items that we buy. We've shortened things there to make it more affordable for the city. We gain efficiency, and then we apply those savings elsewhere. Fleet services, we've transitioned to all-season tires on all of our city vehicles. That may not seem like a big deal, but then we're not swapping vehicles or tires, on and off every spring and fall. And sometimes we ended up storing a second set of tires like that. They end up actually deteriorating, sitting out in the sun for half the year that you don't use them. Public Works, one of my favorites. We've invested in our GIS and asset management programs, which allows them to actually do things at the desk, if you will. So you have a quick question, we can pull up those assets on the screen, see where they're at. We can manage them, we can track them in terms of when they've been serviced and maybe when they're due for service, these kind of things. We employed progressive design build in some of our projects. So this is, instead of going out and putting it for bid and having somebody bid on it, we actually work with a contractor to design it and then build it. And there's savings involved in that. So we're going to continue to pursue those kind of opportunities.
So just to interject, so it sounds, so I keep hearing a theme here, and it seems like the theme is savings, cost effectiveness, efficiency.
Exactly.
So is that where you're trying to take the city government and where we're trying to lead it?
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to think more like business, and I want to give credit to the staff because they are doing that. We always have room for improvement, and sometimes it requires a new way of thinking, but that's what we're driving for. So
can you tell me a little bit, so I've heard a little bit of some of these cost savings, but I know you've also got some big ticket items out there that I think you've really implemented. So where have been some of these big cost savings?
So one of the biggest ones was a couple of years ago. We took a look at where we were investing our idle funds, and we held a lot of our balances in accounts that were drawing very little or no interest on those. And so we took advantage of the state treasurer's pool and other investment tools so that we could get more interest on those idle funds instead of sitting there not drawing any interest at all. And so that actually a couple of years ago, when the interest rates took off, ended up in quite of a windfall for us, and so that was nice to have. It added to our reserves. And when you do that, sometimes it's a double-edged sword because the public sees that you have all this money sitting in reserves, and why are you taking all of our money, and why are you doing that, when in fact a lot of these were the result of changes we've made in efficiencies that we corrected that provided these additional revenues for us.
So just to make sure that I understand, what you're talking about is that the city holds money in different accounts because they have to make payroll and they have to make insurance payments and they have to do all these sorts of things. And so I think it's overnight, you kind of sweep them into a different fund where they can accumulate interest. It doesn't cost the city anything to do this.
We pay for that sweep service.
You pay for the sweep service, but basically you're getting then revenue off of money that's already sitting in the bank.
We're generating revenue, and we're using those assets, those resources more wisely, like the public wants us to.
That's very smart. What are some of the other cost savings that you've had in government, maybe smaller or?
So we've done some reorganizations, and so we try to fine-tune so that we're only delivering the services that are being demanded. So we've made a couple of reorganizations over the past couple of years where we maybe reduced the size of a department, and put the energies into a different area. So that results in payroll savings, of course, and then we use those savings and try to invest in other positions, maybe in other departments to do that. So we've taken advantage of that. When the times have called for that, we've done that. It's needed, I guess, in any business models, and so we responded to the times, and we've seen the positive results from that.
And I assume then that payroll is probably one of your biggest expenses at the city.
Payroll is very expensive at the city. I know today that we have fewer full-time positions than when we started the strong mayor form of government. However, payroll continues to go up. Cost of living allowances increases that the city gives, plus the merit increases that employees earn every year. Our cost of health insurance goes up like it does for everyone. Our retirement benefits, which we're a member of the PERSI system at the state of Idaho, so if they send us a note and said contributions are going up, we have to pay it. It's
not like you have a choice. We're like, I'm just going to go out and find a different system. No, you're required to pay a lot of these things.
It's been very challenging. Yep.
Yeah. What are some of the? So I've heard you talk a little bit about some of the cost savings around, flowers and the things that were happening in city government itself. What were some of the things that you implemented there?
So in the past, it was common practice for the city to, for example, purchase flowers for life events. So somebody at the city might be having a baby, a couple's having a baby, or some other event, and then the city would use its credit card to buy flowers for this couple, and we've changed those kind of things because really we should be passing the hat. We should all having a personal investment in these types of decisions. Same thing, too, with how we use city credit cards maybe to buy meals or not buy meals. We stopped doing that practice. If we're sending folks down to Boise, which we do oftentimes, we're not going to drive 3 vehicles down there and pay 3 people to drive 3 vehicles. We're going to put everybody into one vehicle. Mm-hmm. And this sounds like common sense, but really what happens is it's too easy to kind of drift into these bad habits that we do. But cumulatively, if you can save $2,000 here, $4,000 there, $10,000 there, pretty soon you're up to $50,000, $100,000, and that's some real money. And so we've had to correct those practices, and do things differently. So it took a little bit of learning. It was a little bbit painful for some folks, but it was the right thing to do.
Right. Well, it sounds like a lot of these things that you're doing are very common sense, very business friendly. So and here's, I feel like, the white elephant in the room. So my next question is going to be about property taxes. Mm-hmm. Because I hear from people, and I know people like, my property taxes are increasing. It keeps going up and up and up. But I also hear from the city that they haven't increased in 3 years. So what is really going on, and why do people feel like their property taxes are increasing?
Well, property taxes have increased for residential properties especially, and in some cases they've gone down for some of the commercial properties. And that all has to do with valuation. That happens at the county level, where the assessor goes out, looks at a piece of property, and places a value on that. And so all the values, all the properties in the city then pay for the annual tax budget. And if your property goes up in value, you're going to assume a little bit more of that tax burden. And what we saw about 3 years ago now was a shift from the commercial to the residential properties when home prices just skyrocketed. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, the residential property owners are paying a greater portion of the property tax budget. So that's just natural. It's simple math. So the city doesn't have to do anything. We don't raise our budget. We don't do anything, but yet your taxes go up. So I get that question a lot. But what can we do to help at least minimize that? Well, one of the things we can do, and we have done, is
That's okay. And actually, I'm going to follow up. So while you're getting a drink there, so if I'm understanding this correctly, so what's happening is the property tax rate has not gone up. It's that the assessed value of the property has been going up. So, for example, if I have a house that's $100,000 and now it's $200,000 in assessed value, well, even though the rate is the same, I'm actually doubling the amount that I'm paying because the amount of the value of my property has been increasing. Is that what's going on?
It's close to that
Okay.
because what you're talking about is the levy rate. So if your home value doubles and the budget stays the same, then actually your levy rate goes down.
Oh, okay.
And so it's all assessed on the total budget and the total valuation. That sets the levy rate. So, but remember, if your home value doubles and your levy rate is cut by something less than half, your taxes are probably going to go up. It's just simple multiplication at that point. But what we've seen over the last couple of years is the load factor, the amount of property tax, the portion of the total tax budget that the residentials pay is actually starting to turn and go down a little bit, and the commercials are starting to turn up a little bit. So I see that as a positive sign that valuation is moving back to the commercial side, which I think is a sign of economic growth in businesses. Yes, we have vacant properties in town, but even the valuations on those properties have, for the most part, gone up just a little bit. Their taxes may not be as high because, again, it's all based on the total valuation of the city. So that's been a very good part for the city, and I think it's a promising sign of things to come.
Mm-hmm. So you were going to tell me about what you are doing to help mitigate with some of these increases in the amount that people are paying for their property taxes.
So what we've done as a city, the council has been very disciplined this way, and in fact they have not increased their property tax budget for 3 years now. Mm-hmm. But there's a qualifier to that. If you build new homes in the city, they too have to pay property taxes. So the value on those homes will be added to your base, but excluding the annexation, the new construction values, we have not increased our property tax budget for 3 years, and in fact it went down one of those years. So this is the way that the council has been very responsive to the concerns and the needs of all the property owners to be just as efficient and conservative as we can while providing the services that people demand. We can't do that forever, but we've been successful for 3 years now.
So it sounds like then, if I'm understanding the whole picture here, so you have been having quite a bit of cost savings, whether it's people not buying flowers or meals, to the sweeps that you're doing, to some of the other things that you've mentioned. There's then also been a flat kind of in the net in the budget, so that if people are experiencing fluctuations in what they're paying in property tax, that's also kind of on the county. It's not really the city that's driving it. It's more kind of the county and the assessed value that's really driving that.
The county sometimes they kind of get blamed for this, but they do the assessments, and then we send in our payments to the county. But it's just all driven by valuation. So if you just make it real simple and say there's two people that live in the city, your house and my house, and we have to split the tax bill equally. So you pay $100, I pay $100. If the value of your home goes up, even if I don't do anything to my home, you add a pool, you add a room to your house, it's bigger, it has more value. Now you're going to pay more of that tax burden than I will. So I'm going to say thank you, Linnea, for doing that.
You're welcome.
But it's really all driven by valuation.
Right.
So.
Okay. So what else do you have then in store for city government? What can we look forward to?
Well, we're trying to get serious about our capital improvements, and so we have a project coming up. There'll be a vote on May 20th, and it's for our Main Street project, and that's to replace all the critical infrastructure that's buried under those streets: water, sewer, and stormwater. Everything from the orchards on down flows through these pipes, and it goes under the river and over to our wastewater treatment plant, for example. And they're old, and we don't want to wait until something catastrophic happens to replace them. It would be too costly and too disruptive to everyone. And so we're trying to be proactive that way. We have a couple of other capital projects. Our new water intake on the north side of the Clearwater River, we need to get that repaired, fixed. The so-called permanent one we have in operation today, quote, it's operated for 1.5 years in the last 50 years. So we've been using a temporary facility that has worked for us for the most part, but we need to get that addressed. So we have capital needs out there that I don't want to wait, for somebody to come along. The
Right.
state government's not going to do it. The
Nobody
federal
else is going to
government's not
say
gonna
for
do it.
us. We just got to do it ourselves.
So we're just being
Yeah.
very strategic about that and moving forward with that. And at the same time, trying to keep to very minimum any increases in rates or taxes along the way.
Well, it sounds like a very unglamorous job then, because if what we're doing is talking about saving money from, these kind of cost improvement measures, we're talking about sewer and stormwater. This is just the bare bones stuff that a city government kind of needs to do.
Well, I think that's what government's asked to do. We provide the essential services and nothing more. So I don't need to come tell you how to live, but you do need sewer, water. You need your garbage service, your stormwater, your streets, these kind of things. Government will provide those essential services, and then we're going to get out of the way.
So that we can kind of do what we need to do.
Let you live and let businesses thrive.
Well, excellent. So you talked about some vacant storefronts that we have in Lewiston. Is this infrastructure at all connected to some of the storefronts that we have that are vacant in downtown? And tell me a little bit about more how this project might help that effort.
Well, I think how it's going to help those storefronts and everybody downtown is it's going to bring some life back to our downtown Lewiston. It provides the capacity, the room to grow. So when we finish our underground infrastructure improvements, we're going to take a look at the top side too. That's not part of the current project, but that will be part of it at some point. That's where we're going to ask the community to once again get involved and tell us how can we best make this work for everyone, and how can we make this work for those that are coming to our community. So there'll be some changes on the top side that hopefully will add value to our storefronts, to our businesses, to the traveling public, to anybody who lives here in the city of Lewiston that wants to come downtown and enjoy everything it has to offer.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like this is also, from what you explained, it's not just a downtown project. I like to say water flows downhill, right? So this actually is impacting and affecting pretty much anybody who resides or does business in Lewiston.
Anybody that lives within the city limits of Lewiston and demands those services. So if you think about when those pipes were put in place, Lewiston was at the time, I think, the capital of Idaho, and much smaller.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, back in the 1860s. And so, but it was a much smaller community, and it was serving a much smaller area. So I'm sure when they were putting those in back then, they weren't thinking about the city growing all the way into the orchards. Right. Today we have those same pipes in the ground, and the city have grown quite a bit. And so all this traffic, all this water, all this stormwater, everything flows through pipes, especially the stormwater and our wastewater, where they all accumulate down. Water runs downhill, like you say, so it all accumulates from the east to the west and from the south to the north, and it comes to this choke point in downtown Lewiston. Then we have to address it. It goes through our stormwater ponds today. We used to not have a levee system. And the wastewater gets all pumped under the river and over to the wastewater plant. So if you're up in the orchards, if you're in the country club, if you're in the airport improvement district, anything like that, it all flows down to this one location and it goes under the water.
So I just, again, want to make this very clear. So even if I'm living up in the orchards, my toilet, when I flush it, is going through downtown.
It goes through transmission pipes from, say, the Central Orchard Sewer District.
Right.
That ties into the city of Lewiston's pipes. Those pipes transmit that all the way to downtown Lewiston, and from there it gets pumped under the river and over to the wastewater treatment plant.
So if we don't fix this, then we potentially could have a very, very major problem for the entire city.
We will at some point, because things wear out. We see that most visible example is our streets, where we see potholes and cracks developing, and then we have to go out and maintain those to extend the life of those streets until we have to do a complete overhaul. And it's no different in our underground infrastructure. So we'll get a water leak, we'll have a sewer break, and we have to tear the road up and we have to fix those. But after a while, it just makes more sense, more economical sense, to tear the streets up, replace all the pipes, get all the new infrastructure put in place, cover them up, put a new surface on, and then hopefully wait 20, 40 years before we have to do anything else again with them. So
right. So what's to me fascinating about this project is that if I think about other communities, usually there's some kind of a financing mechanism that people are going to have to pay for. So they're looking at rate increases or looking at tax increases, but you're saying that there's not going to be a tax increase or rate increases in order to pay for this. How are you able to do that?
So we don't, it's not our plan to levy a tax to pay for this. We will go out and sell a bond. We're trying to raise money for this. We'll have a financial consultant work with us to go out there and sell our credit, sell our bonds, try to get people invested in buying our bonds, and we'll use that money to finance these infrastructure improvements. And then what we will do is we will make monthly payments on that through our existing revenues. So our general fund, which is our property taxes, will pay some of that. Our enterprise funds, which is the sewer, the water, the storm water, we collect monthly fees on those, and we'll use a portion of those fees to make their portion of the payment. It's not all about water, wastewater, or sewer, streets. They're all sharing the cost of this improvement, and it's ideal to do that. If we had to do that individually, tear the street up, replace the wastewater line, come back a couple of years later, tear the street up and pay for a water line.
No, the businesses would not survive.
Very,
there's
very
no way that would be feasible. So then if I'm understanding this correctly, so basically, you know the total amount that you're going to need to get for this project. You're going to go out, get a bond. So basically, other people are paying for us to have the money, and then you just make those payments every year, and you know that you're going to be able to cover those payments because you already know how much money is coming in. And frankly, again, it seems to me like, well, you can pay money either to keep repairing something that is at this point not really repairable, or you can then pay the money back on a bond. I mean, it's still the same money. Either it's going to continuing to repair something that you can't repair anymore, or that same money can go to repair, or not to repair, but to make a bond payment. Obviously, that's not the total amount, but I think there's some cost savings there that people need to understand.
That's exactly what it is. And so we, investors, will buy the bonds, and we'll use their money. We're borrowing that money to make these improvements. And we've run the numbers on if we were to say save some money, do $5 million worth of improvements this year, do $5 million worth of improvements in another 5-6 years, and thereafter until all the improvements are made. And it actually costs us more in the long run to do that.
Well, I can tell you that's going to cost more right now, because anybody knows that construction costs 5 years ago are radically different than they are now. So if we wait every 5 years to do that, that just seems like we're just adding more and more and more cost to this, not to mention the fact that then you're having to pay again to tear up the street again.
There's a lot of uncertainty with that approach.
Yeah. This locks it in. It's like, all right, well, we know how much we're going to pay. We know how much it's going to be. We'll just get her done and call it good.
Locks it in, then we're done. One thing I should share with you is that it would be our intent to do this over one season.
Wow.
To lessen the disruption. So how would we do that? Well, ideally, maybe we start in the fall and work through that in the fall, winter months, and then the following summer we tear it up and lay it back down in one summer, and then finish it that fall going into the winter, so that we only have to really, disrupt things during one summer season.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. A lot of people have been asking me, well, what about the downtown businesses? And I have to say, well, the downtown businesses all support this. And I think that's probably why, is because if you're a downtown business owner, you don't want to see this happen multiple times over multiple years. You want it a one and done, because that's the only way you're going to survive through a construction project. That's
our goal. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the city to be on the top of their game, because there's always disruptions in the process, and or other unknowns. And so we're going to have to be out there communicating with the public. We're going to have to be working with our contractors every day and keeping this process on track and moving forward. It's a big challenge.
Great. Well, can you remind us then, when is this vote?
The vote will be May 20th.
All right. Well, thank you so much for telling us about this project. Mm-hmm. Thank you again for all of your time spent telling us about all the different improvements that you've made with the city. And to our listeners, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again on Elevation 740. Thanks so much.